The revolution's begun. The time to stand up has come. We are the rocking of the throne. We are the rocking of the throne.
Hi, my name is Victor Tiffany, the co-founder of Revolt Against Plutocracy. And tonight I have a special guest, Revolt Against Plutocracy committee member John Rachel, and the pioneer of CFAR agreements, candidate agreements. John, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm late. Technical issues.
Technical issues. Got to use the right browser.
Exactly.
Just a very simple question for you to get this thing kicked off. For candidates who are thinking about whether they're going to sign a contract with voters or not, why do you think they should do this?
Well, that's a very simple question with a complex answer. So let's just look at what the CFAR is. The CFAR is a contract for American renewal. And it's a contract. It's a legally binding contract. Certain tasks, if elected, to public office, to Congress, to Senate, or House of Representatives. There are 11 things on the contract, and they have been specifically designed or specifically chosen because they all share two important attributes. One, they are very, very popular with the public. All of these 11 initiatives are supported by 62 to 80% of the public. Number two, all of these initiatives are effectively blockaded by our current Congress. This sets up a very interesting dynamic. You have the public who want certain things done, very, very strongly advocate that these things get done, and you have a Congress, essentially an adversarial Congress of elected individuals who are not listening or representing the needs of the people. So the contract puts in writing a commitment to do the very things that people want. If an individual wants to get elected, this is a fast track to getting voter support. I mean, it's so obvious that, of course, there's a reason why the establishment candidates don't follow the preferences and dictates of the people. But if somebody wants to get elected, this is the way to get elected. So signing the contract is the first step toward putting together a successful, people-powered populist campaign and winning an election.
All right. Well, compare it. I mean, not issue by issue, but if you're a candidate, let's say you're a Democrat, and the establishment has put forward the better deal, right? That's their ideas, these platitudes and promises to make things better again magically, without too many specifics. And you have to choose between the establishment's better deal and the CFAR. Why would a candidate choose CFAR over the better deal?
Certainty. That's the single word, certainty. The better deal of the Democrats, the raw deal of the Republicans, consists of a lot of vague rhetoric, a lot of empty campaign promises. They've been promising for years and years and years to do something to fix the Social Security problem. But instead of fixing it, they make it worse. They've been talking years and years about creating a sustainable, livable wage for American workers. Not only does the present establishment candidate Congress not address this issue, they actually encourage, they put into place laws which facilitate the export of all the good, decent jobs from America. So the short answer is certainty. We can, if a person says, yeah, I like this idea. I think I'll go with that. And another person says, look, I'm offering you in writing. I will stake not only my reputation, but I will stake my own personal wealth, my job security, everything on this. I'm putting in writing that this is what I'm going to do for you. That's what the CFAR is. It puts in no uncertain, completely unambiguous, clear language exactly what a CFAR candidate will be doing from the first day they arrive in Washington, D.C. There's a time limit on these things. There's 180 days that the person has to co-sponsor, to introduce and sponsor or co-sponsor legislation in support. It's right there. I'll read the language because it's so clear. I hereby commit to sponsor or co-sponsor and vote in favor of legislation for all of the following. Bang, bang, bang. I will not resist, discourage, or in any matter put up any impediment to, and will in fact publicly and on the floor of the House of Representatives and Senate actively promote any and all such legislation which exclusively supports these measures. There it is. The better deal is a bunch of promises and platitudes that we've been hearing year after year after year, going back decades, as the real situation and the real conditions for American citizens, the American workers, continues to deteriorate. So
well, let me ask you another question that's related. You have progressives out there. They're not running, a platform that's anything like the better deal. There's just an awful lot of overlap between what's in the CFAR and what's on their platform. But some of those people, and I won't name names, but some of them won't sign the CFAR. What do you have to say to these candidates who basically refuse to make a binding commitment to the voters to actually do what they claim they're going to do on their own platform?
Again, there's a very simple answer, and it's two answers. Either they don't understand the CFAR, they don't understand that it is their best friend and ally, or they're fakes. They're frauds. They're faux populists. They're saying things that sound like Bernie Sanders, and they're things that sound like what's in the CFAR. They allude to these things. They say they're in favor of them, but they won't commit to them. So they're fakes. And those people, we don't have time for. The time is running out in every aspect of American politics. Everything, war, taxes, minimum wage, health, education, everything. The clock is running, and we're getting it to the end of our ropes on all of these matters. So talk is not enough. What we need is firm commitments. And if these progressives truly understand what an asset the CFAR is to them winning, and if they are real progressives, they would be breaking down our doors to get a copy of this and sign it.
Explain to them or the audience what that asset is. How do they use it in a way that will benefit them and help them win their primaries or general elections?
Okay, by signing the contract as a legally binding instrument, what they're saying is that if this contract, something goes awry, it goes south, they are saying they will be subjected to the full legal force of adjudication in our legal system. Now, however that plays out doesn't matter. Going through the trial itself will be a trial of trials. It will be a showpiece trial of the decade. So they're saying, they're laying it on the line. They're saying, I'm signing this and I intend to honor this as legally binding. What can their opponents do? Their opponents cannot sign this stuff. Are you telling me that the typical establishment candidate can say $15 an hour minimum wage immediately? Of course not. They will lose all support of their major party. They will lose all of their donors, all of the business community, the banks, everybody will abandon them. They'll lose their money. How about raising taxes on the rich? Come on, these people are rich. They represent the rich. They do the bidding of the rich. They're not going to raise taxes on the rich. So they cannot sign this. So now what we have is we have them in a rock and a hard place. They literally, the CFAR candidate has made a firm commitment in writing to all of these things, and their opponents can't. You can't make it more stark and more real, the difference between these two candidates. The opponent candidates are not interested in representing the interests of the people, and the CFAR candidate is. Now people have a clear choice. I always say to people, it takes the guesswork out of voting, and it does that on all levels. If a claimed progressive candidate won't sign this, he's not really a progressive, because these are the things that polls I mean, I've gone over poll after poll, and the polls support all of the items in the contract. So this is what the people want. And if a candidate won't sign it, it means one thing: they're not fully committed to actually backing and fighting for legislation on behalf of the people.
Well, one final question, if I may, before we run out of time here. I've actually had a candidate who says, well, I'm not going to sign a contract with voters. That's a Republican idea. What do you have to say to people who think things like that?
It's not a Republican idea, it's an American idea. I mean, I love the way that people like carve up the population and ideas and everything. Is the Constitution a Republican idea, or is it this is silly talk. There is a history of Republicans using something like nothing like this, but something called a contract. In fact, I'll be very candid. This whole idea was inspired by the pledge, the No New Tax pledge. That was the inspiration for this.
Norquist.
Yeah, Grover Norquist. I said, why is this so effective? Well, it was obvious. It was effective because if they didn't sign the pledge, they'd get their butts booted out of Congress. And I went, that's the key to getting a Congress that works for us, is by threatening the establishment candidates with a pink slip. Either you sign the contract or you're not going to get elected. And then I realized, and this has been going on for 5.5 years, the evolution of this idea, which started out as a pledge, has evolved into what it is now, which is a very, very powerful instrument. And it's not a legal strategy, it's a political strategy. And I'll get into that I have a closing remark I'd like to make. But then I said, even better, these establishments, we're not going to bring these people around. This is how we open the door for third parties and independents and truly progressive candidates. Because these are the people who do represent the interests of the people, but the people don't know it. They have no way of, these candidates have no way of communicating in certain unambiguous terms that they are on the people's side. So with a contract in writing, people understand contracts. And yes, the Republicans did understand that back in the 90s. They had Contract for America.
I'm glad you brought them up again. Just a quick question before you go into your final statement. Did that work? Were they able to use that contract to get elected in 1994?
No, it was a public relations gambit.
Did it work?
And it worked.
It did work.
And the only thing that contract has in common with the CFAR is the word contract. That's about it. And another one was Trump put up a contract with the American people, but it wasn't even claimed to be a legally binding instrument. It was basically just a public relations stunt. The CFAR is not a public relations stunt. If you'll allow me about 2 more minutes, I'm going to go into my closing remark here, because this sums it up. Ultimately, the CFAR is about power. Now, there are a lot of people that disagree with our current system, but it is what it is right now, and it's all we have. Thus, the CFAR is about grabbing power, people power. And I say, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. It takes the guesswork out of voting. But I mean this on 2 levels. The most obvious level is what's in the contract. Yes, on those specific issues, it draws a line in the sand and says, okay, this candidate will promote these things, his or her opponents will not. But more important level than this is it takes the guesswork out of what type of person we're voting for, what kind of person we want in power. We have a very obvious choice. On one hand, we have ruling class puppets chasing money, doing the bidding of deep-pocketed campaign donors, corporate vultures, big banks, Wall Street, the ruling elite. On the other hand, we have a candidate, the CFAR candidate, who's willing to put it all out there for the people to see, black and white, in writing, in a contract, willing at great risk to him or herself to answer directly to the people who vote them into office. What a concept, to represent people, not special interests and not the ruling class. So the CFAR makes clear what kind of person we're putting into power. And it's all about power. What kind of people do you want sitting there writing the laws that affect the daily lives, the jobs, the livelihoods, the schools, the roads, everything about this nation? What kind of person do you want there? And that's the power of the CFAR. It takes the guesswork out of the voting. And it does this by disconnecting the CFAR candidate from money. Because with the contract, you don't have to, there's no more powerful tool in modern society, especially with social networks and the internet and everything else, than word of mouth. And when word of mouth gets around, if there are candidates out there that have a firm, legally binding commitment to serve the people, that's going to spread like wildfire. You don't need to take money from the Koch brothers and from Wall Street to win an election anymore. That's why we're doing this nationally. Because if this spreads nationally, you're going to see a groundswell of support for populist, progressive, real populist, progressive candidates like never before in history. And it's going to change everything, because it's going to change who sits in the seats of power.
Well, I appreciate that, John. I appreciate your time with me tonight. And I just want to follow that statement up with a request from people who are viewing this, to hearing about the CFAR for the first time. Share this video. If you're watching this on Facebook, use the share button. If you're watching this on YouTube, use the share buttons down below. Share it on Twitter, on Facebook, and so forth. John, thanks for joining me tonight. I appreciate your time and this explanation.
Come on. You got to put a plug in for our website. It's all right there. All
right. Yeah, I'll put the website down below. The candidates go to, where do we go? CFAR, CFAR 2018.us. And people who want to get involved on the grassroots level and help support and promote the CFAR candidates can go to CFARmovement.us. And again, I'll put both of those URLs below in comments or in the video description on YouTube. Thank you, John, very much appreciate your time.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Revolt Against Plutocracy won't just be covering the news about the necessary revolution in the United States. Sometimes we'll be making the news. If you want to stay on top of the revolutionary actions and strategies of grassroots, genuine progressives, and our allies, please subscribe to our YouTube channel today.